F-35s. That's now up for review. If Canadians are flying one airplane, we're flying another airplane. It's no longer interchangeable, and so that might even threaten NORAD without talking about new alliances that promise even more security and safety to our people.
Is it your view that NORAD is under threat?
Well, if Canada decides to, buy equipment and those types of things that no longer are interoperable with America, it means that's one of the fundamental agreements of NORAD. And if Canada can do what it wants, and if it decides to move in a different direction, we would have to have some kind of a discussion on NORAD.
Hello everyone, another edition of the Ottawa Market. He's an interview with Pete Hoekstra, Ambassador Hoekstra, talking about NORAD potentially being under threat regarding if Canada goes ahead and purchases the Saab-Gripen from Sweden instead of buying F-35s. Now, based upon my experience, background in international relations, as a member of the University of Toronto community, and did also work at Norman Patterson School of International Affairs. This is like a completely outrageous concept because NORAD is an entity which is primarily there to serve American interests as far as protecting the United States from the threat of nuclear attack, surprise attack from Russia going over the Arctic to the United States. NORAD isn't really a critical interest for Canada as compared to the United States. So whether NORAD disbands or not, it's not a big issue. The big issue is, like for the United States. So the likelihood that the United States would simply tear up NORAD because Canada is buying another plane, buying a different plane is outrageous. They're not going to, the chance of United States tearing up NORAD for any reason is like, I can't even think of a good reason why they would want to tear up NORAD because it's their interest. It is driven by American interests. And they currently have a U.S. commander in charge of NORAD, and Canadians are just pretty much in NORAD for the ride. So this whole concept comes from Pete Hoekstra is another. Here we have another way that that Ambassador Hoekstra is trying to sow dissension, trying to sow uncertainty, trying to use what in my view is a specious threat that NORAD is up for grab. No, I mean first of all, Canadians. Whether NORAD exists or not is not, again, a critical national interest. It's mostly there to serve the United States. So, this sort of specious sort of threat that NORAD is in danger simply because Canada buys a plane that is not interchangeable with the United States. I mean, in my view, Canadians should be should be completely independent. In my view, interchangeability should not be in NORAD. NORAD should, in my view, as far as Canadian sovereignty, be two sovereign armed forces working together, the United States and Canada. There should not be these, Americans jets flying over Canada at their own whim. There should not, we cannot have that in a sovereign environment where we're trying to protect our sovereignty. So this whole idea of interchangeable, that's something definitely not in a Canadian interest. So if Saab-Gripen encourages an independent military in NORAD, then that's definitely, in my view, in service of Canadian interests. And this whole interchangeability idea does not serve our interests. What serves our interests is a NORAD that exists between one separate command structure for Canada, one separate command structure for the United States, and both of them cooperating, as the case with pretty much, NATO and most military alliances. That's how they work. Most military alliances work based upon sovereign militaries coming together and forging agreements. NORAD is a very unique military agreement, which basically, where there's a unified command structure which fuses pretty much the Canadian Armed Forces, with a particular focus on the Air Force part, fuses military interests together, and that is not serving Canadian interests. So this whole stuff that Ambassador Hoekstra is coming with is outrageous. I mean, you can almost tell by looking at him that he doesn't really even think it's credible, and it's just a specious threat. That's my sort of, by looking at him, I'm just sort of very skeptical whether he in fact believes at least what he's talking about here is completely outrageous. So that's my take on the latest threat of Ambassador Hoekstra regarding, the Canadian decision on military aircraft. In my view, this whole argument about NORAD being threatened because of Canadians potentially buying a plane other than F-35s is outrageous. But you can share your thoughts below. What do you think about this? And we invite you to make a donation to us by clicking the link below, because we really need donations in order to improve our production quality, get more interviews, have the technicians that we can pay. If you can spare any amount, then that would be most grateful for expanding our coverage on Canadian sovereignty, and as well as more some interviews on the Saab-Gripen versus the F-35 from various experts. We welcome any donations you can spare. Thank you very much for watching another edition of the Ottawa Market in our foray into political and social commentary with a focus on Canadian sovereignty.